So now we come to our Talking Timber guest slot, where we discuss timber trade topics of the moment, and we're going to look at where the sector and the market are headed in the years ahead.
Yeah, today we're talking with Dave Hopkins. Dave is Chief Executive of the leading trade body for the UK timber sector, Timber Development UK, or TDUK. It's an organisation which has over 1,500 members, from importers and merchants to architects, designers and engineers. TDUK's role is to act as the voice of the sector to policymakers and as a bridge between suppliers and specifiers and end users, and to provide technical guidance to the latter. Fundamentally, as its name suggests, its aim is to develop the market for timber. We're talking to Dave today about a key issue, timber availability now and into the future. Timber demand is growing around the world. There are a range of market drivers. They include rising consumption in developing countries as their disposable income increases, plus increasing substitution with bio-based materials of energy-intensive products like steel and concrete as part of efforts to decarbonise construction. The World Bank estimates that global wood consumption is set to double by 2050. So the question is, how can we ensure there's enough to go round, while at the same time we maintain forest cover to mitigate climate change?
Whoa, there's a lot to tackle there, isn't there? It's a big question, Dave. And do you feel it's already preoccupying the industry? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is on people's minds. I think that particularly for the UK, for the European buyers and users, the European timber market, they have realised that we've been going through a flat period, whether you want to call it a depression, recession, whatever.
I agree.
It's a fairly flat period of trade, a flat period of construction.
Yeah.
And that has masked the fact that actually things are in quite tight supply.
Yeah.
We obviously, let's take the example of Russia and Ukraine war. We used to get 10% of our softwood supplies into Europe coming out of Russia.
Yeah.
That obviously, quite rightly, there is a ban on trade with Russia as a result of their invasion. And the question is, where do we get the rest of that supply from? We can disguise it whilst the market is flat.
Yeah.
But if if demand starts picking up across the continent, then obviously we're going to notice the fact that chunk is missing.
Yeah. So do you think, with Russia and Belarus out of the picture, when the market does pick up again, that's going to give us perhaps a taste of where availability is heading in the years ahead, and that supply will be tighter?
Absolutely. I think what people miss is the fact that even before that war, the balance between supply and demand was quite well balanced. You know, it was quite tight already, and when you take out large swathes of forest like that, it gets tighter still when the demand comes back. And I wouldn't want to say we don't have the wood. I think actually it's questions of accessibility and ramping up production. The timber industry is slow to react to demand in many ways. It's quite difficult to suddenly just switch on production.
Yeah.
You can with other industries. So I think there'll be a time lag before we can make up that difference. And I do think that where it'll bite won't be in the sort of overall numbers, the total volumes of wood fibre. It'll be on, specific dimensions, grades and products and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And that we'll see, much tighter supply, maybe difficulties meeting the demand, and maybe people looking for alternative sources for getting those products.
Yeah, I've just come back from the International Softwood Conference that was held in Italy, and again, everything you've just said was encapsulated there. At the moment, Germany, which we always think of as being a massive powerhouse, is going through a recession. Building numbers are really way down. This overall demand isn't there in the way it was a few years ago. But if that just came back to what you'd describe as normal, that would really ramp up the demand. Then you got little minor issues, like we had a presentation from India, 1.2 billion people with a sector where the construction industry has now been given the green light for the use of timber in construction. Quite scary numbers, really.
Yeah.
I know. It's and if you think a lot of European producers are already selling to the States as well. The European producers sell to a lot of other markets. If countries like India suddenly start, even on a small scale, they start to build with timber.
Yeah.
A small scale, when you've got 1.2 billion people, is quite a large impact on a forest sector. So they're not going to have the same structural grades available in India as we do in Europe, and it will be Europe that will supply them.
Yeah.
Now that might be good news financially for a lot of people in a lot of the sawmills, but it will put a lot of pressure on that demand, on that supply.
Yeah.
And we've got to ask where it comes from.
Yeah.
And possibly more crucially, are the house builders in the UK, for example, willing to pay that increased price?
Yeah.
Are they aware of the demand pressures that are coming down the track?
Yeah. But I mean, what about? I mean, there's plantations, growing timber in plantations has been increasing, particularly fast-growing species like eucalyptus. And I know plantations have their sort of critics amongst environmental NGOs. But do you think in the right place and if they're well managed, that plantations can be part of the solution for keeping up with timber demand?
Oh, absolutely. I think when you've got an issue like this, the real challenge is to get more land under management. So you need more forest area. You need to actually convert land into forest. How do you do that? You can't always rely on natural regeneration, particularly not for commercial reasons, because you don't necessarily know which species are going to come through on that. And so you're going to have to plant them with a specific thought in mind of having good products at the end of, after a certain period of time. The only thing I would caution about is, species like eucalyptus, what its application value really is. It's great for the paper industry, for example. They've got loads of it in, across Brazil. It's good for certain applications. But if we want structural, solid structural timber, you're going to have to grow the species that are right for that. And that's going to be more pine and spruce, Douglas fir, these sorts of things. They can still be grown in plantations, but they are going to take longer. And if you want the structural grades, you have to wait for them. And so the plantations are good, but we need to sort of keep increasing that land under management, because it is going to take. I mean, what's a commercial to get structural grade pine, for example? What is that? 25 years? That's quite a. It's quite a long time to wait.
Yeah.
We've got pressures now. So yes, I think that they play a vital role. Actually, I think that you're going to see more and more planted forest, plantation forest, whatever we want to call it, productive forest.
Yeah.
But it does take time to produce the goods.
Yeah.
So timber processing technology, I mean, that's obviously got to play a role in making the resource go further. Do you think that's going to keep on rolling? Are we going to get more out of less?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And it's also about, you're making sure that none of it goes to waste. I think where you see the innovation in the timber industry at the moment largely has been in the panel board sector. So things like OSB, MDF and other products. They're making use of kind of byproducts from, say, from sawmills, and making use of large volumes of them to turn them into really good, high-grade construction products. Which then, for something like, if you think of panelized timber frame construction, the mainstay of building timber houses in this country, the panel boards are allowing you to use sort of fewer, or less solid timber, because they're holding things together in that, those sandwich panels through, broad sheets of OSB or whatever. So I think that we're going to see more of that. And I think that processing technology will make a big difference in terms of utilizing every last drop. And also then the efficiencies you're seeing in sawmills with, the laser sort of laser measurements to work out exactly where to cut through the logs and to get the maximum yield from every log that comes.
It's interesting what you're saying on this, Dave. What I was sorry to interrupt you. I was just saying that back at the International Software Conference, obviously it's international. The American presenter was explaining, and the Canadians weren't dissimilar, to be honest, that they really have a problem getting rid of residuals from sawmills. The European, I know, the Europeans in the room were almost crying. It's such a stark difference that they're saying, what do we do with all this sawdust and all these mill chippings and bark and stuff? Where do we dump it? It's quite astonishing. So I think you're right that there's definitely room to get more out of what we've got.
Yeah. And there's, another.
Sorry, go on.
So I was going to say another. We've got other sort of technical developments that are about enhancing the performance of less durable and resilient wood. We've got various types of timber modification, and then we've got engineered wood products such as glue laminated timber, cross laminated timber panels, laminated veneer lumber, which again. To an extent, are getting more out of, in terms of performance, getting more out of faster growing, less kind of resilient products. I mean, do you believe they have an important role to play as well into the future?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that there's quite a lot of research going on about the use of faster growing species to make make bigger products, things like the CLT, the glue lam beams, all that sort of stuff. Can you make it out of lower grade, faster growing species? And can you get the same performance value out of it? And there's a lot of research going on at a number of different universities about that. Yeah. I often think about things, other developments in similar worlds, but things like bamboo and stuff like that is making sort of huge inroads into these markets. And it may be that a lot of the timber traders in the future find themselves being bamboo traders or bamboo product traders just as much as they are being timber traders. So absolutely, the other species and the research that's going on is going to be vital to keeping this whole sector moving.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly, it's still, I think, in its infancy, but I'm using a brand name, but it's a very well-known one, Akoya. The modification of radiata pine, to me, literally looks like turning a sow's ear into a silk purse. I mean, it really proves that you can turn lead into gold. It's an amazing product, and there are many other brands that use the same acetylization process.
Other modified timbers are available.
Thank you, but it is amazing what they've done, I think we've got lots more to come off that. There seems to be a bit of controversy over the merits of wood plastic composites. Manufacturers say that in using sawdust, which is a byproduct of timber processing, and recycled plastics, that they're environmentally sound. Do they have a part to play in reducing the sort of supply strain on timber?
It's
a tricky one. It's tricky, isn't it?
It's a tricky one because yes and no, and you could use a lot of recycled plastic as your plastic feedstock for these composite products and things, and you can use the sawdust or wood flour or whatever they call it in there. My issue always with this stuff, you have to have a whole life cycle approach to all products these days. What do you do with that at the end of its life? What happens? Can you realistically separate the sawdust and the plastic? Does it just get burnt? When you burn wood, yes, obviously that's not the ideal end point for it, but it doesn't have a whole range of other pollutants in there. I mean, it can burn quite cleanly. Can you do that with plastic? I don't know. And I think that there's still a lot of work to do from the plastic side of that, of those composites, to really produce proper certification about their environmental claims and certification about their whole life performance. The environmental product directives, declarations,
yes.
EPDs.
EPDs.
We've got them for most wood products now, or certainly a lot of them. We're developing a bigger and bigger EPD database that's available on the TD UK website. We've got nothing on wood plastic composites at the moment.
Right.
And
do you think there's in plastics industry, they talk about regrind, don't they, where you've got virgin plastic that you put in for certain products, but you can use reground plastic and then remold it. When we go to, say, composite decking and composite products, that maybe the life cycle is that you regrind that material that's got a mix of plastics and wood in it and then reuse it again?
Yeah. I mean, I think that would certainly improve it. But I think the onus is on those companies to start producing those product declarations and those environmental statements and life cycle assessment studies.
Yes.
To really demonstrate that they're as good as they claim.
Yeah.
That's really where the pressure's got to be.
And it's, as you said, it's the disposability of the, when that product reaches end of life, what do you do with it, isn't it? Where can you separate out the timber from the plastic? And so that's obviously going to be a key consideration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we've also, I as consultant editor of Timber Trades Journal, and we've reported on latest progress in speeding up, developing faster growing trees, and there is genetic modification going on, but what we've focused on is more sort of natural cross breeding of timber species, and there's this development of vertical farming in Scotland, which accelerates the growth of trees. I mean, has that got, from your perspective, do you think that's got a very strong future, or it's going to be an important part of the mix?
Yes and no. I think we've got to look at what those, a bit like the argument with eucalyptus, what can you get out of those faster growing trees? Will they still have the same qualities? Yeah. What are we growing them for? And all sorts of things. There's a lot of research going on with Edinburgh Napier University, as you said. Yes. And I think the tree species was called Apollonia. You can get these very wide trunks that look really big and weigh next to nothing because they're actually full of air. Right. And so you've got to say, well, what can you do with that? Certainly you couldn't get a structural grade out of a solid piece of timber. Could you chip it up and use it for OSB or other products? I don't know. And I think it's those sorts of questions that I think need to be addressed, really. But I think that there's going to be a lot of that going on. I do remember in the early days of people doing the research into particularly genetic modification, the trees became very bendy, and so they were meant to be really tall, and after a certain height, they just flopped over and they grew along the ground horizontally. So I think that there's still work to be done, but certainly the research has got to be done, and we've got to look at all ways of producing more. Yeah.
So tropical timber, where is that in the supply equation? I mean, it's a hugely abundant resource. It could have particularly valuable and unique characteristics, but at the same time, maintaining that tropical forest is really important for mitigating climate change. So where's tropical timber in all of this, Dave?
Well, I think it's got a massive role to play, and I think that there's three points I'll make on this. One is to go back to the idea of plantations that we talked about earlier, and planted forests and productive forests. Then you've got to look at the natural forests. And then the third part of that is, why is it always seen as a slightly dodgy subject, or one which people approach with a bit of trepidation? And that's to do with the governance and really the sort of legal frameworks and legal governance that you get in a lot of tropical countries. They're developing countries. They haven't got the same legal institutions and enforcement of rule of law in quite the same way that we have elsewhere in the world. Yeah. And I think that all of those three factors relate quite well to each other. So on the one hand, the danger is that you just chop down natural forests. You don't want to do that. You do want it properly managed. Companies like Danza, Precious Woods, a whole range of others have got vast swathes of natural forest that they manage to a very high standard in places like Republic of Congo, and are pulling out brilliant species and doing so in a way which maintains and manages that environment better than you're getting in, say, national parks. There was a great study, if you read the sustainability report from Danza, for its for the plantation bit that they've got called EFO, they've got more gorillas, chimpanzees, elephants, and what they call megafauna. You've got more of that in a commercial logging concession than you have in the national parks or the conservation areas.
Yeah.
Why? It's because they've got more money and they manage it to a much higher standard than any of those other landscapes. So on the natural forests, you've got that. However, coming back then, you've got to recapture a lot of land. And what is very interesting, you've got companies like Miro Forestry, who are a member of ours, who've raised a lot of investment to take on all sorts of different lands. Same with Mir Plantations in Ghana. And they've taken on, raised a lot of money, bought up old areas or taken on the management of areas which were things like cocoa plantations, which have really seriously degraded the land. And they've put plantation forestry in for things like species like teak, for example, or akume in the example of Miro forestry. And they're reclaiming a lot of land that perhaps once was forested, got deforested for agricultural purposes, and is now being reforested as people realise, the carbon.
That's a positive story, isn't it?
And they're bringing, Miro in particular, bringing really good high quality akume plywood and other products back into the mix, selling it back over here, managing those areas to a very high standard.
Yeah.
And that would happen more if we could encourage greater governance within each of these tropical countries.
Yeah.
And so countries like Indonesia have a really good system in place, SVLK. It's a timber legality assurance standard, a TLAS, for the management standard of the forests, for monitoring that, for verification of the timber coming out of there. And they can give a stamp on there so that it's a proper quality product that's met all the laws, that's met all the standards, and so on. If you can encourage more of that around all of the tropical countries where they actually enforce that, you'll have higher quality products, better maintained forests, higher standards of labour and all of the sort of labour safety laws and things that go with it. And you'll have products that are fit for the market, for the European market, to help or the Western market, the global markets, that help make up the shortfalls that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Right. And it's really why we as an organisation act as an advocate. There's an initiative, global initiative called BMRC, Broader Market Recognition Coalition. And really what they're trying to do, it's a network of countries and trade associations and NGOs really trying to help develop national sustainable forestry systems within countries and get some sort of market recognition for what is going on within those countries so that they can sort of be put on a pathway to getting their products recognised and continually improving the systems within their countries to bring more and more land into management and attract more investment into their country to do more of it.
So that's going to incentivise sustainable management. I mean, if it combines, I mean, it's sort of harnessing the market to sustainable managing the tropical forests effectively.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it does both. It'll be, harnessing investment for management of natural forests, but also putting money in for kind of reclaiming land and putting in planted forest as well.
Yeah,
right. So you get both of those aspects.
Yeah.
But they only really come, and the money only really comes if you get the governance right. Yeah. To make it acceptable for international investors, international companies.
Yeah, but you've also got, certified timber. Certified tropical timber, but there's perhaps not enough of that to go around. So
yeah, it's difficult with the certification. I think at last count in the tropics, it was 5 or 6% of the tropical concessions.
Yeah.
if you know, that's after 30 years of certification.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be realistic. Certification is great. It's a good high management system for those companies that can afford it. Okay,
Yeah.
but it's only suitable for them. So for those companies, they put a management system in place. They know all their products are being managed to that level, and then for the consumer, they have a label on their product that demonstrates that this product has been managed, maintained, produced to a very high standard all the way through the supply chain.
Yeah.
Brilliant. However, for everybody else, you know, that 95%, something else is needed, something to kind of move you up that pathway and get some sort of market recognition for the work that you are doing.
Yeah.
And if you were to compare all of the certified concessions across the tropical world, in terms of land under management, and then you look at a country like Indonesia, which has got one big national system, which is a very high functioning timber legality assurance standard with very strong environmental drivers, good labour laws, all the rest of it that are in there. The land under management there of forested land is not far off the entire equivalent of all of the tropical certified concessions in terms of area of land. So that's just one country. So if you could do that in one other country and run it to a high standard, you're going to have a bigger impact overall than having very, very, very high gold standards over a very small area.
I'm going to have to cut in on that, Dave. I'm sorry because we're running close to time, but I think we're pretty much there, aren't we?
Yeah, but I was going to say just about tropical forest. We don't want to overdo the tropical forest angle here or the tropical hardwood, but I mean it's got phenomenal properties, hasn't it? And as Keith said, and unique kind of aesthetics.
Yeah.
And there are ways now that we can be secure and safe in sourcing tropical timber, and you believe there will be more of that in the future. So tropical could be an important part of the sort of availability equation into the future. There are positive signs there. Absolutely,
and brings huge amounts of benefits, you know, to the people there, but all over the world. So definitely, I think it's definitely got to be part of the equation.
Yeah. Oh, thanks very much indeed, Dave. That's really put a good light on all of that, hasn't it?
Yeah. So are you? I mean, you're optimistic about the future of availability. Or I mean, there's going to be sort of issues, and we need to change some of our strategies. But you know, looking forward, will there be enough wood to go around? I mean, we need to preserve the forest on one hand, and yet we need to use more timber to substitute energy-intensive materials like timber, plastic. I mean, steel, plastic, and concrete. So you've got those two sides of the equation. But are you pretty positive that those two sides of the equation can be balanced?
I'm very positive. I'm very positive that we can meet that. I think that we can do that in the long term. I think that we've just got to be realistic that we may face a fair few pinch points along the way.
Yeah.
And the road to achieving that is never going to be perfectly smooth. But I do think we will get there in the end.
Perfect. Thanks ever so much, Dave.
Yes, thank you very much. And
no problem.
If any listeners have got comments to make, perspectives to give about what we've been talking about today, please get in touch via talkingtimber.co.uk. Thank you.